Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we have the Lieutenant Governor in the House. We're going to talk about what else? Marcellus Shale, transportation funding, and then Fred Anton from our all-star panel. Fred and I are going to debate what? How we pick electors in the state? We'll be back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, well, again, welcome back. Well, we're going to get this straight. In the House, sitting across from me is the Lieutenant Governor, Jim Cawley. We can show him. I'm going to call him Governor because that's the way you address the Lieutenant Governor. I get email about this,
pretty much.
Governor. I'm going to get email because they think, well, you're not the governor. That's okay.
We get that all the time. The best way for those of your viewers who might be with a military background is when you see a lieutenant colonel, you address him as colonel.
Colonel, despite the fact that there's several degrees. Yeah, I get it. Well, but I'll get email about that. I mean, you know, I always like to have a little fun with that. All right, and you were governor for what?
90 minutes, but who's counting?
90 minutes? Okay, and you didn't remake the Constitution,
Did
right?
not.
You didn't do what the Lieutenant Governor did when Jerry Brown was governor in California when he was dating Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
He would leave the state, go out, and the Lieutenant Governor would do all these executive orders, changing all the policies. Brown would have to run back. This is not the current, you know, same guy, but when he was governor earlier.
Yeah. Well,
you didn't do that, did you?
No. What Governor Corbett and I agreed upon was our goal was that most Pennsylvanians would find out about the fact that I was acting governor a couple of days after it already had happened. That was our goal.
That's great. Well, look, let's get down to business. You all took about 2 months. You've looked at your Marcellus Shale Commission report. You've come out with your recommendations, which you've sent over to the legislature. Just go over if you had to say 3 or 4 big points in it, what would you say?
Well, number one, the package of bills and proposals that the governor outlined as a result of our recommendation was aimed toward 3 things, actually. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. The economic development opportunity that Marcellus Shale presents. Not only what it currently is doing to continue to make sure that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as part of an overall strategy, has a lower unemployment rate than the national average. But what it is that we can do in order to train our workforce. Right now, 7 out of every 10 jobs in the industry in this state are going to Pennsylvanians. That's a nice start, but Tom Corbett and I aren't satisfied with that. We'd like it to be, at some point in the near future, 10 out of 10. So we've outlined ways in which private industry, in which higher education, colleges and universities and vocational and technical schools all around the state can work to make sure our Pennsylvanians meet the jobs.
Let me ask you about the fees. You know, you're going to each well. You're proposing a tax of $40,000 one year, and then over the next several years that would decrease. Look, I'm not interested in whether this violates a governor's pledge, is a fee, a tax, a tax. My big question to you is this sufficient to gain the revenue that you need, that the Commonwealth needs to do a variety of things that you've outlined? Is this going to give you enough revenue, do you think?
Well, I will tell you that right now the industry is paying hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes annually through one of the highest corporate net income taxes in the country, through a capital stock and franchise tax, through sales tax, through withholding tax, payroll tax, use tax, a whole host of different taxation sources. So that since 2006, this industry has been responsible for almost $1.5 billion going directly to the general fund that's being spent in schools and roads across the state.
So you're comfortable that the $40,000 at the per well will give the revenue that you're going to need for all, I'll get in the next segment. I want to get into how you divided the revenue and some questions, but you're comfortable with that?
Well, what the governor charged us with through the Marcellus Shale Advisory Commission was to determine whether or not there were impacts to local communities that weren't being met through a direct funding source. And what we did was outline several different areas in which that is a possibility. The governor then said, and unlike, as you said, you don't want to get into a discussion as to whether it's a debate or whether it's a tax or a fee. Well, let me tell you, to Tom Corbett, it's very important because he made a commitment not to raise taxes.
I understand that, but we're going to run to a break. But my point is, you've got the bill on the table. That's what, in effect, the legislature should be debating, the merits of the bill, notwithstanding that other thing. All right, I want to ask Governor Cawley when we come back about the disposition of the funds and who gets to decide whether there'll be a tax. We'll do that and more. After we talking about bills, we pay some bills.
Sounds good.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking with the Lieutenant Governor, Jim Cawley, about Marcellus Shale. We'll get to transportation funding soon. All right, let's talk about, look, under this impact fee, essentially each county has to decide whether to impose it. But what happens if a county says, well, we don't want to do it, but there are townships, you know, other municipalities that are affected by the drilling and may want an impact fee? What's the situation there?
Well, we're taking a look at that right now as a possibility. There may be a petition process for individual member municipalities within a county to be able to petition the county in order to impose the fee if in fact they feel that it's appropriate to do so. But that's going to be part of the ongoing discussion between the legislature and the executive branch as we proceed.
So in other words, would you say that you put in the framework, and obviously it's up for discussion, you know, the legislature being the legislature, the likelihood that everything you put in remains, you know.
Well, you know, I go to the old thing, two things you shouldn't watch being made, sausage and legislation. So there's going to be a lot of room for discussion.
Now, one other consideration that I've heard has to do with the zoning requirements and dealing with 18,000, I'm exaggerating, 18,000 zoning boards in all the counties. Is that a problem that the industry has talked with you folks about?
Well, one of the things that the industry continues to talk about is uniformity and predictability through their growing of this industry in this state. But one of the things that both Governor Corbett and I, being folks who have come out of local governance, he serving as a township commissioner.
Shale Township.
Yeah, exactly right. And I, both as a school board member and as a county commissioner, understand the importance of municipal sovereignty and allowing communities to determine what's best for them. So that's going to be part of the discussion as well.
Fine. Two other quick things.
Sure.
The way you divide the money, 75% will stay local, and, you know, it gets into, you know, different configurations there, the county, the impact, you know, the direct and then the indirect. And also these other divisions, 25% going up, look to me like 1,000 different ways. Are you comfortable with that? I mean, what about the question of the environment? I mean, in the environmental fund, I mean, you know, the environmental community has said, well, you know, you don't do enough there. What's your response to the?
Well, I can only tell you that the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection, Mike Krancer, was part of the commission, and a large segment of that remaining 25% goes to the Department of Environmental Protection to help them meet their goals, as well as driving money to PEMA for emergency management, the State Fire Commissioner for making sure that we're training our emergency personnel, the Health Department for obvious reasons, and then transportation as well.
All right, I hate to do this, but again, we got to take a break. We'll be back. I want to ask the Lieutenant Governor when we come back about transportation funding, and we'll see where the legislature is waiting for, I guess, the governor's office. He says what some leaders say to give them a response to a bunch of recommendations that were made. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back with Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley. I want to shift gears a little bit and infrastructure. Look, every commission, every report, Ed Rendell had 1.7 billion. We know that, you know, we can argue about how much, but we need, let's say, $1 billion a year. We'll just put that on the table. The Transportation Commission says oil franchise tax, license and registration fees, hike them. The big problem is money. What's the position of the administration on how we're going to fund the transportation needs?
Well, Governor Corbett, I think, very clearly indicated that the first best mission of government is public safety, and making sure that we have safe and efficient thoroughfares helps to achieve that goal. So what he's doing right now is looking at ways in which we can make sure that our thoroughfares, our bridges, our highways continue to be safe, but also maintain another pledge that he made as a candidate.
Tax pledge?
Exactly right. Yeah. And to make sure that any move that he makes that would even indirectly have people paying more at the pump not be done, and that promise not be sacrificed on some other altar.
We have 7,000 miles of state roads that
got
are
more than virtually any other
state.
Need
repair. 25% of the bridge is structurally deficient. And the oil franchise tax, which, by the way, is a tax that the companies pay, may get passed along, set $1.25 a gallon a zillion years ago. So an adjustment in that up to the current price would raise a good bit of revenue. And can you argue that's a technical change?
Well, Terry, what I would say to you is the operative word in your sentence was the word in which you dropped to the lowest octave, and that was may. Right. It likely will. Let's be intellectually honest. It likely will raise the amount that you pay at the pump.
I understand that.
As an individual.
We agree.
So, then the question becomes whether or not is that a violation of the pledge that Tom Corbett made? Are there other avenues in which we can explore? And I think the governor found a way in which to at least limit some of the stress.
And what is that?
And that was what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. That percentage that's going to PennDOT for the maintenance of roads and bridges within the gas-producing area. It's a large segment of the state. 2/3 of the state geographically are gas-producing or potentially gas-producing area. We can drive money, those revenues there. That might free up the ability for us to drive additional revenues to other portions of the state.
Before I let you go, are you going to make a specific recommendation back to the legislature on this the same way you did on Marcellus Shale, where you issued, a report back, to the entire state, but you know what I mean, back to the, is that what you're going to do with it, or are you going to piecemeal it, or you're still deciding that?
I am not going to make any recommendation. Governor Tom Corbett is still assessing his options, and I think that we'll hear something.
Any timetable?
Very shortly.
Oh, we like that. You see, the Lieutenant Governor said, look, I want to thank you for coming. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Some breaking news, give us a call. I hate that breaking news. You have news, we'll put it on. All right, Fred Anton from our all-star panel, he's coming up. I think Fred and I are going to get into a little interesting discussion about how we choose what electors in presidential elections. That's an important subject. We'll take that up and more after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, welcome back. Well, Fred Anton is here. Now, look, Fred, you missed the last all-star panel. Now, I don't know where you were, but we had to bring you back, and I wanted you to come on and respond to the Lieutenant Governor. I also want to talk about this Electoral College business. I know. All right. You admit we got this huge transportation need. You agree with that? You're the business guy. You're the business guy.
Every person agrees that we need $2 billion to $2.5 billion to fix our roads and bridges.
Well, okay, then. What are we going to do about fixing it?
Isn't it a shame that the mania of no taxes has to apply to a situation where we definitely need funds and can't? Isn't there anyone who's willing to break through and say this is so important, and there's not money available in any kind of savings. Now, I happen
And we need a lot of money. I mean, this isn't like
this isn't
this
a
is not
small
300 or
amount of
400
money.
million, and we need it over a period of time to rebuild the infrastructure, right?
Now, doesn't somebody have the courage? It's certainly not me, because I'm not courageous, and I don't want to be.
I know better than that.
I don't want to be drummed out of the conservative community. But isn't there someone who says that capping the gas tax at an unreasonably
you mean
low
like
level?
125 a gallon?
Yes, that is unreasonably low. Now, isn't there someone?
We'll
most
see.
of the commentators think that the gas price in the United States ought to be significantly higher than it is for conservation and for nothing else. In Europe, they pay $8 or $9 a gallon. Now, when are we going to come to our senses, and when are some of the politicians?
Well, look, I've said all along on this show over the years, number one, it's important not just for the jobs that it would create in the state, but businesses that you know better than anyone else aren't going to locate in this state with an infrastructure that is deteriorated. Is that, I mean, even I can figure this out. You don't have to be very smart to figure this out.
When you add that on to the other disincentives for business, like higher taxes, it's a no-brainer. When have we had an automobile? Does any automobile plant ever even consider coming to Pennsylvania? No, they don't even. If
and the other thing, we're going on to the Electoral College, but the other thing is, look where we're situated. Between New England and the Midwest, you have to come through our state. You have to come through our state to do all the transit, right?
Right.
So we're a pathway east to west and west to east, which is another reason that we need to work on, you know,
and north to south. We're in the New Jersey, Washington. We're in the population.
All right, we got to get to the Electoral College. All right, here's the deal. There's a proposal in the legislature that would have us allocate presidential electors out of congressional districts. We now do it winner take all. You win a state, you win all of the electoral votes, even if you win by one vote. Under a proposal by the Majority Leader Dominic Pileggi in the Senate, he would have electors chosen out of congressional districts. We will have 18 next year, 18 electors chosen. That way you win a CD, you win an elector, and 2 would go for the overall state winner for the U.S. Senate. Fred, do you like this idea or not?
I like Pileggi's proposal, but it's not as good as allocating the electoral votes based on the popular vote in the state of Pennsylvania. It is unfair. It is manifestly and grossly unfair to give all the electoral votes of a state based on a slim majority. We know in Pennsylvania the vote will be split at worst 55-45 between the two parties.
So the one who wins gets them all, the one who loses gets none.
And there are the arguments that I've heard made for maintaining this system are ridiculous. One argument is that it creates a lot of interest. The horse race argument, the argument that people won't come to the state, that's ridiculous. We're not running horse races here. We're not running win or lose here. We're not trying to sell newspapers here.
All right, if Fred Anton were king for a day, would you just simply drop the Electoral College and go to straight popular vote, let every vote be counted that way?
I would.
All right. It takes an amendment to the Constitution. That's not going to happen. That's why we're having this debate.
The
Go ahead.
most horrible result in a presidential election is for the Electoral College to produce a winner that has not won the popular vote. The Gore-Bush result in 2000. Gore won the popular vote.
By 500,000 votes,
and he should have been president. Democracy requires, doesn't our Constitution, as interpreted, one man, one vote? Everybody gets a chance to vote who's qualified, and the winner on a national basis. We're a unified country. We're not 51 or 53 countries. We're one nation.
All right, well, let's take another aspect of that. The problem with the proportional voting proposal is that you would get all kinds of third parties that would actually win some electors, And conceivably, if other states did that, you would have no one would get 270, right?
So the Electoral College should be abolished.
Oh, you think if that happened, then it would get abolished because people wouldn't like the election for president to be decided in the House of Representatives.
Right. But I think Pennsylvania, to start with, ought to do this now. And I think either the Pledgey plan or a majority allocating them on the basis of the total is fairer, basically fairer, basically more democratic.
All right. Well, I mean, we'll see. You know, the governor is supporting this proposal. Dominic Pileggi is the Republican state chairman, not for it. He's been open about that. There's not a single Republican member of the Pennsylvania congressional delegation has signed on to this. You know, they've been. Because they're concerned about what?
Because they're concerned about their own elections.
Well, is there anything wrong with that?
And money pouring into their districts to get
You understand this.
I understand it now, but let me say this, and I will say this. I would say 70-30 against any change passing. 70-30 against any change passing, because the status quo is the status quo. And when they're divided within the Republican Party on this issue, nothing's likely.
There is division. There is, at least we'll say, and in all candor, I testified earlier in the week before the State Senate Government Committee as a professor. I just wanted to get that out. We always, full disclosure on this program. All right, we have about a minute and a half. Marcellus Shale, you heard the Lieutenant Governor. Impact fee, good or bad?
Impact fee is good. I think the proposal, Corbett's proposal, and I was glad to hear Jim Cawley talk about all the taxes this industry is paying. When they talk about an impact fee or a severance tax, they always leave out of the stories how much money the industry is paying already. Yeah. And of course, we have other major issues before the legislature, and I don't think they have enough legislative days to deal with other major issues.
That's a good point, and something we can get into later is, they're in, what, 15, 17 days yet before they take a break, and they've got this huge agenda.
And with these issues are important. Sale of the liquor stores, resolving that one way or the other. Dealing with the problem of school choice or how we're going to.
Well, there's no doubt they have one of the. I mean, I don't remember a time. The issues are just huge. I mean, they're not little issues, and they're having trouble, I think, getting together on this. I mean, but it's something they're going to have to do ultimately, or you know what's going to happen. And would you agree with this before we're running out of time? Before we run into the next thing, we've got the problem of time. And next year, what will they get done?
They won't get anything done because it's an election year. You know that,
okay,
Dr. Madonna.
We're out of time. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.